Now, I was browsing the internet looking to see what viceroyalty Puerto Rico was part of. I wanted to know since I was working on my Puerto Rico flag video. However, I came across this image. Very interesting in it of itself, but if you look closer, you will see something even more interesting. To the left of the map appears two oceans I've never heard of. So I tried Googling it, but to no avail. I went on Reddit to see if anybody knew, and I got an answer. From a book called The Naval Chronicle, Volume 6, July to December, 1801. Now shit gets interesting here. In this time period, the Pacific Ocean was called the Great Ocean. The term Pacific was used to describe the modern South Pacific. The Indian Ocean was called the Eastern Ocean as well. In the book, the oceans are mentioned as such: the Great Ocean, the Atlantic Ocean, the Eastern Ocean, the Arctic Ocean, and the Antarctic Ocean. This was the term for the Indian Ocean at the time. The author notes that the name doesn't make sense, as to some it is a southern ocean and to others a western ocean. He then says this interesting quote from page 368, especially for the era. He says, and I quote, "A geographer should belong neither to one continent or to the other. He ought, figuratively speaking, to skim above the surface, and viewing the globe turn beneath him, attach to each part of the ocean which surrounds with its waters the two terrestrial masses, appellations equally appropriate to every country, and all the nations of the earth. Let us efface then, without pity, names which ignorance, accident, circumstances, and national prejudice have introduced, names which time and habit seem to authorize, but which neither habitude or time, that justify nothing absurd or inconsistent, can bear consecrated, in such a manner as to render indelible." Very interesting perspective during that Eurocentric era. Now here's the real meat of the video. In the book, the oceans are subdivided into even more oceans, hence the title of the video. I like ocean names, so more is a good thing for me. The portion of the Atlantic Ocean above the Tropic of Cancer is called the Septentrional Atlantic Ocean. The portion below the Tropic of Capricorn was the Meridional Atlantic Ocean. The portion in between both tropics was the Atlantic Equatorial, or the Equinoctial Ocean. The Pacific, or Great Ocean as it was known, was divided as well. Above the Tropic of Cancer was the Great Boreal Ocean. Below the Tropic of Capricorn was the Great Austral Ocean, and in between both was the Great Equinoctial Ocean. Now, the book talks about the Pacific. It is first explained in the book that the name comes from Magellan. When he passed Cape Horn to, and I quote, "a new ocean opened before him, and this ocean, thrice the size of that which we knew, as it extends from pole to pole, was called the South Sea, or Pacific Ocean." He called it such because even though there were winds, the water stayed calm. Interestingly, the author noted that this sea was no more southern than the Atlantic from which they came, though he states that the name Pacific is no more better, as it comes from the Spaniards when, and I quote, "It is neither more Pacific or more southerly than the others. It is this great ocean that has been traversed in different directions." It appears that the name Pacific applied to the Southern Pacific, at the time known as the Great Austral Ocean. He also notes that the name doesn't fit, as it ignores many of the other navigators who visited there. I agree with the authors that Pacific may not be the best fitting name for the ocean. However, the Great Ocean is no better name for it in my opinion. I do like all the subdivision names, even if a bit wordy. I wouldn't know what else it could be called other than one of those subdivision names. Maybe it could be named after the Nazca tectonic plate or some old Polynesian name for the ocean. I wouldn't know. I'm also glad that the Eastern Ocean is now called the Indian Ocean, even if that name isn't as elegant as Atlantic or Pacific.